Hello, my name is Jennifer Bland, and today I want to present to you another video in my series on acing the whiteboard exercise that every software engineer will face when they interview with a potential employer. The whiteboard exercise is a process that potential employers will use to determine whether or not you've got the coding skills that they need for a position that they are currently trying to fill. When you go in and actually do the interview with a company, it's your opportunity to actually demonstrate your skill sets and your abilities so that you can actually get that job. So I would like to go through and actually demonstrate a sample question you might get in a whiteboard exercise, and then how you would actually go about handling it. So I have an example, and the example is: write a function that takes a string as parameter and returns the frequency of each letter of the alphabet that's found in that string. Okay, that might be a question that you might be asked in a whiteboarding exercising. Always when you're doing a whiteboard exercising, ask questions to the potential employer so that you understand exactly what they're expecting from you and what you actually want to bring to the table in terms of the functionality of your functions that you're going to create. So one of the first questions that I might ask is, okay, if you're given a string, what about case? Is case important? Is an uppercase A counted as 1 and a lowercase a counted as 1 for the lowercase? Or is that counted as 2 for A, since they're both A's and it doesn't matter if it's uppercase or lowercase? So that would be one of the first questions that I would ask. So I'm just going to show you how to handle this, whether they ask you to treat uppercase or lowercase either the same or as separate letters. So let's get started, and let's start working on our function that we're going to be creating for this potential employer. So we're going to start off, we're going to create a function, and I'm just going to call my function count. And my function, very simple, is called count, and it's going to have the string as the input that they are giving me. And what I want to do is to go through and look through every character that's in the string and count the number of times that that letter appears in the string, and it returns that information out of the function. So the first thing that I want to do is, well, what about case? Is case important to you at all? And you need to find out if it is or not. So let's say that case isn't important. An uppercase A and a lowercase a are treated exactly the same. So what we can do is, the first thing that we can do is we can take our string and we're going to convert our string to lowercase. So that makes everything in the string all lowercase. So anything that was previously uppercase will now be lowercase, and therefore we can actually be able to count what was previously an uppercase A as a lowercase a as exactly the same, since they're now all the same case. So that's the first thing that I want to do. Now I need some type of container to hold the count of each individual characters. So one of the things that you can use is you can use a number, you can use an array if you want, or you can use an object. In this case, I'm going to actually solve this by using an object. So I need to define my object that I'm going to use. So I'm just going to create an object. So I have an empty object right here, and that's going to have my count that's going to be returned back out of this function. So the next thing that I need to do is loop through every single character that's found in that string. So I will need a for loop. All right, so now I have a for loop. This will go through every single character that's found in that string. And what I'm going to do is actually put that into my object. Now, what I can do is, in order to do a count, I'm going to take advantage of the functionality that's built into an object in JavaScript. An object is basically a key value pair. What I'm going to use as a key is the letter. The value is the count of how many times that letter has appeared within that string. So that's what I'm going to be using. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first check to see if that character is in my object that I'm going to be using as my placeholder. So if I'm going to check so what this will do, this will either return the actual character if it's in the object right now, and if not, this will actually return as undefined because it doesn't exist in the object itself. So what I want to do is, if it doesn't exist, then what I want to do is go through and add it to the object. If it does exist, in this case, this is asking, does it exist? And if it does exist, then I want to increase that value in that key value pair by 1 because it now has one more character found in that string. So in order to do that, what I can do is I come in and I basically take the current character, which is found in this key, and I'm going to set its value to its current value plus 1. So therefore I'm going to basically increase it by 1. All right, then I'm going to have an else in here, and this is if the character doesn't currently exist in my object placeholder. So I'm going to now add it in there, and I'm going to set its value to 1 because it's the first time that this character exists. So what I have is I can put object all right, so now what I've done is I've gone in and I've added that letter to my placeholder object, and I've set its value equal to 1. And it will go through and it will loop through everything that's in there. Now, the last requirement that the potential employer asked me when they asked me to write this function was to actually go through and return the count of each letter that's found within the string. So the last thing that I want to do in my function is I actually want to return my object. And therefore, I've gone through and I've given them everything that they've asked me to do. So when you're going through, this is something that you might have asked as part of a coding challenge, and this is how you would actually go through and resolve that coding challenge. Now, when you start looking at this, there are a couple of things that you can actually do to this to make it a little bit better, make it run a little bit cleaner and so forth that comes in there. So one of the other things that you might ask is, well, what if the string has spaces in it? What if it has a period at the end of a sentence? What if it has a question mark or an exclamation mark or numbers that are in there? What do I want to do in that case? And you need to ask that question. And it's something that you should ask because it tells the potential employer that you're thinking about scenarios that you might encounter in real-world applications. And that shows them that you have that ability to think about what might happen so that you can account for it within your code. So if they come back and they ask you, I only want to worry about letters, only the letters A through Z. I don't care about numbers, I don't care about punctuation marks, I don't care about anything else like that. So what we need to do is take our string that we've converted to uppercase, and now what we need to do is we actually need to strip out anything that's not a character. And so we can actually go in and change this. So I'm going to add a line in here, and I'm going to use a regex expression, and a regex expression will basically go through and says, here's my criteria, anything that doesn't match it, I'm going to basically strip it out of the string. So in my match, what I'm going to be looking for is for anything that's not A through Z or A through Z uppercase. And if it's in there, I'm going to replace it with quotes, which basically means it's going to strip it out. So if you had a string that was, hello Apple, how are you today? And there was an exclamation mark at the end of hello Apple and a how are you today? There was a question mark at the end, and then maybe 1, 2, 3 after the question mark. This would basically pull out, this would go through and pull out all of the spaces, the exclamation marks, the periods, anything that's not a letter. And a letter is anything A through Z, so it's going to remove that. So that's one of the first things that I can do as an improvement to the first iteration that I did on my function. Another thing that I can do is, if I look at this if-else that's in here, you're starting to see some repetition that you have in here, that it's basically taking this, it's setting this key, and it's either adding a 1 to the current value or setting the value to equal to 1. Well, you can actually take that and combine that into a single statement using a ternary operation. So if we come in, I'm going to actually erase this if statement. And what we're going to do is we can replace that, and what we're replacing is object So this is what I'm setting, and I'm going to either set it equal to 1, or I'm going to take its current value and increase it by 1. So I'm going to set it equal to here, and I'm going to do a ternary operation where I'm going to check to see if it's currently there, and if it is there, if it is true, then I'm going to increment So what the ternary operation is going to do is I'm setting this value, and what I'm doing is I'm doing a comparison. I'm going to check to see if the current letter is in my placeholder object. If it is, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take its current value, and I'm doing a plus plus on it, which means I'm going to increment it by 1. Then if it's not there, then you have the false statement, and it's going to be setting it equal to 1 so that we actually see that. And this information, that whole for loop, all that if-else that was in here can be replaced with this one line so that we have it in here. And then this information gets returned back to you. So that is a way of actually going through and implementing a whiteboarding exercise for doing things. Some of the things that you might also see this implementation of this function in some other variations. And some of the other most common variations that you might find on that is, instead of returning the frequency of every character that's found in the string, they might ask you to return the character that has the most frequent iteration in the string itself. So what you would do is, once you've got everything into your object, in here, before you do the return, what you're going to have to do is to basically look through that object and then check to see how many times each character occurs, and you find the one character that has the most occurrences, and then you actually return just the character and the amount of times that it actually occurs in there. So that's one thing that you would see as a variation to basically this simple question that you're using in an object. Another way of asking this variation of this function is it comes back and they might say, I'm going to give you a code snippet. You tell me if it is correct or not. And what they're meaning is they're going to give you something in the string that comes in is going to be like programming code, kind of like this function. And what they want to do is to check to make sure that you have an equal number of, like, if you have an open parentheses, you have a closing parentheses. If you have a open curly brace, you have a closed curly brace. Open parentheses, close parentheses, open square bracket, close square bracket, and make sure that they all line up evenly on there. And the way that they should line up, in here I have two sets of brackets. This one is open, this one's open, this is closed, and then this closes the first one that's in there. So you should always have, they should always pair up along that line. So that's one of the things you can compare. And the way that you can go in and modify this in your object is you would actually put in, if it has braces, so you might have, one of your keys might be braces, and in there you put in all of the open braces that you have, curly braces. And when you find a closed curly braces, you should remove the open one from the object itself. So that when I come in here, I'm like, okay, I have a open curly brace, open parentheses, so I'll put that into my object. Then I'll keep reading through my string, and then when I get the closed curly brace, I will go to my object, and if there's an open curly brace in there, I will remove it from the object. And then I will go along, same thing here. I'll put an open curly brace in, open parentheses in, then I'll immediately take it out because I've reached the close. And if we were following along in our object would have, it would have an open parentheses, then it would have nothing in it because now that open parentheses has been removed. It would have an open curly brace, and that would be the only thing currently in the object. Then we come around to this line. Now our object will have two things in it. It would have this open curly brace, this open parentheses. When it sees this, it's going to remove this open parentheses from the object, leaving nothing but this open curly brace. And as you work your way through, when you get to the very end of your code, you should, at the end of the string, should have an object that has nothing in it. If there's nothing in the object, that means that the code snippet is valid. So that's one of the things that you can do as a variation for answering this question. So hopefully this information will help you out. The goal is to help you prepare for your whiteboarding interview that you're going to have for your software engineering positions. And this is how you would actually go about and answer these questions when you're presented with that information. So I appreciate you watching. Feel free to share this, like the video down below. My name again is Jennifer Bland. My website is jenniferbland.com. Thank you very much for watching.